Back, everyone, to Master of the Universe Horror Podcast. Today we're bringing you Insidious for The Last Key. And this one came out in 2018. And guess what this is, Chris? Our first
completion of a franchise.
Exactly. I don't even have to wise them up to the business with that one. But this is our first one that we've completed so far. There probably might be a Insidious 5, but who knows?
And I gotta say, this is a proud moment for us to have completed a franchise. I mean, that's big time. And then on top of that, we know that the completion of the Freddy franchise, including the 2010 remake, is right down the road.
Yeah, we're recording this May the 1st, and it's going to be scheduled to come out, if you guys are listening to this, I think on like actually on the 11th. Yeah, because after that we're having Freddy vs. Jason, then after that, who knows? But yeah, that's the way the schedule is set up, so we always try and keep a pile up for you guys and just have them scheduled out, so you always have something to listen to weekly in case we, got something going on. But yeah, this series, I think it just, I don't know if we had talked about it, what made us want to start doing it, because it wasn't on our radar when we were doing the Nightmare series, and we just decided to jump on into to do it. And I went into the franchise like really loving part 1, not really liking part 2, kind of really loving part 3, and not liking part 4. And that's kind of stayed the same for me because I've seen it before, but it's kind of changed. Like for me now, kind of going back, the first one is my favorite. That is, the best one. The second one, I like it a lot more than I did back then, because back then I kind of didn't like it. But now I'm like, wow, that one was pretty good. It had like a lot of elements that the first one had, except it had the family as a whole more together rather than just the girl, whatever her name is, the main chick, getting scared the whole time. Now we had everyone and the mom, which I liked, which was cool now that I look back. Part 3, I still like the ghost and some of the scares, but I didn't like it as much as I did before. Before was probably my favorite, and it's still badass, but it just seems kind of...
Main chick on the first one I was just remembering is Renee. It's Josh and Renee.
Renee, yeah, I was thinking that name. And then this one, I went into it really not liking this film just because, and I still really don't like it, but I have a little bit more appreciation for it now than I did before because it's kind of a dark film, don't you think?
It is, and the thing is I don't hate this movie or it's terrible, that kind of thing, but it's just honestly it was made and it gives kind of an origin story of Elise that bridges back to the events of the first one. So it's not bad. It's not terrible. I mean, given it's part of the Insidious family, it's good for a horror film because I mean, like I said, like we've always done, I'm not, horror is not my first choice of genres, but it's good enough. And I mean, honestly, I'll tell you my favorites. Just honestly, go in the order of the movies. Like the first one was my favorite. That was just they hit that one out of the park. Second one I liked because I was so intrigued by the ending of the first one leaves you dying to see what happens next.
Yeah.
So it goes through the murder mystery. It's not the same kind of thriller of a family being haunted, but it's interesting. It grabs you. You're wanting to see where it leads to. Third one was just kind of like a non-stop scare of one person.
Yeah. And
then the fourth one is this one here that we're doing tonight. I mean, it's just it's not paranormal, and we'll get into that later. But it's not paranormal.
Yeah, exactly. If you had to describe this film, if you had to give a summary or a synopsis without giving all the details away, but the way you would describe part 1, for me, I would say part 1's about a boy that he gets into this other dimension, when he sleeps, and he starts bringing demons, into the real world. But only because he sleeps, he's bringing them to his world, whatever. And the mom, is watching him, and all kinds of crazy shit starts happening to her. She feels all the paranormal shit going on. They have a sidekick come and tell him what's going on and why this is happening. That it happened to the dad before, and now it's happening to the son. And they go into the further with him, and then they pull him out. So kind of like a basics, you don't have to get into super detail on why all these things are going on. You could basically describe it in 30 seconds to a minute, right? With this one, go ahead and try to describe this film.
This one is just weird. It's out of nowhere she gets called by someone to come help with a haunting issue, a paranormal issue. And by pure luck coincidence, I guess, it happens to be the house she grew up in.
Tell
And
me,
now
tell me about the house she didn't grow up in, dude.
that'd be the house that didn't smoke a crack pipe when they wake up. And then they find out it isn't even really a paranormal thing. It's more of a demonic thing, like a physical demon that you can touch that's traveling between the further in the house, and it's fucking with people's heads and shit. Like, that's really what's going on here. It's not like spiritual beings that, somehow find a way to move objects and run around and scare the piss out of you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that because I sometimes I forget because I'm not, I don't plan our conversations. But yeah, it's not paranormal; it's more demonic, and those are two different things,
Yes.
So with this one, yeah, and I think they even mentioned that. I don't know if they did during like the behind the scenes thing or what, but they were saying how like like in the first one, for example, like they have the ghosts that are around trying to get into Dalton, which we see, and then there's the red-faced demon. He's a demon. He's the strongest one because if he's a demon, he's the one that's trying to get in there, and he's the one that actually like takes them to the further and all that. So with let's just jump on into it. So it's a flashback. Well, not a flashback. Well, it's not a flashback, but we as the audience, we kind of see what it was like in 1953. It's the backstory for Elise growing up, and we get to see when she's like a kid, probably like I guess she's probably like 10 years old, and then when she's like 15 or 16 on the later part.
She's 16 years old when they get to the adolescent years, and I think the movie tries to tell you, not so much up front, but later on, you figure out that she's maybe 2 years older than her younger brother, maybe 18 months older, and I'm guessing here she's probably, I think, if he was 5 when this happened, I think she said he was 5 when she's telling people later. So she would have been, let's call her 7 at 1953.
Yeah, that's about right. She is like 7 because the way she's like crying when her dad's whooping her ass. So yeah, so we see her as a kid, see her like I said as an adolescent, and then we see her like now, right? Well, not now, but before she met the family that we know.
And can I say, what I like about this is it tells you the year, it's 1953, and then it also tells you on the mailbox Rainier. So now I learned, they may have even said this on other ones and I didn't catch it, but I guess her maiden name growing up was Rainier.
Yeah.
And it's 1953, and what I like is they walk into the house, and alcoholic daddy is sitting in front of the TV, and what's on the TV? Joseph Stalin, and they're probably reporting on his death because he died in March of '53.
Yeah, when they start talking about that. Well, like, when I got that, it kind of like, I guess, well, this movie's written by Leigh Whannell, and he kind of swings to the left, because I follow him on Twitter, and like, I'm not like, oh, I'm pro left or pro right, like, I kind of see the stupidity in both, parties, of course, and I always see him right away, like, seeing that, like, people that are on the right are like bad people or dumb people,
Yeah.
like the way they both see each other, right?
It's the way a typical Hollywood young guy would see the world.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and I bring that up not because like, oh, he's bad for bringing it up, but I'm trying to like, I guess, try to understand what he sees as somebody that's a bad person, because obviously, at least if you've seen the film before, she's like, her dad is like a fear, like he's like I guess lives in fear. He's like, he's up to date with all the fucking the news of the world on hating the communists, and shit like that. And then he's a wife beater. It's not really said, but it's kind of implied. And then of course he's beating up his kids and locking them up. So it's not like, oh, this guy, he's a like the way you would see a Republican in the early days, like always reading about how the communists are bad and shit like that. So that's what I got from when I saw that. I'm like, of course Leigh Whannell would like try and paint it out like, oh, look at him, he's like so he's got to keep up to date with the with all the communist shit because he's a Republican. And then, of course, he's a man of authority, a warden, and he doesn't care about shit. And that's when we learn about Elise's kind of background with her powers when she was, like, hearing the people in the prison being executed or some shit.
And she mentioned by name. She's like, "Do they show you no guy? They don't show an execute. They don't show anything." She's all, "His name is Wayne Fisher. He was 32 years old. Killed a lady with a hammer. His last words were, 'Go to hell.'"
His name is Freddy Krueger. He takes us to the boiler room. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they always got a gimmick like that in the film. So the dad doesn't want to hear it, because he doesn't want to believe in shit like that. And she's like making the little brother like scream, not purposely, but I mean, because there's ghosts in the house, and one of them like runs out of the closet. And it was funny because I was just talking about that last podcast. It might have been on video or not, but I know I was talking to you about it. I was like, have you noticed like every James Wan film, and I know this is not a James Wan directed film, but it's written by Leigh Whannell, who writes all the James Wan shit most of the time. And we have another kid run out of the fucking closet again as a jump scare.
Well, she told her mother that there's a spirit of a little boy in the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're always having little kids run out of the fucking closet for some reason. The dad gets pissed off, and whips her and locks her in the basement, and she's ever, crying her ass off. And that's when she is like, she hears like a demon talking on the other side of the door, dude. You want to explain that?
Yeah, and even right before that is a key theme, key object of the movie, which is the whistle that she gets.
Yes.
And then her brother kind of takes it as his own, the whistle. But then she, like I said, gets spanked, gets thrown down in the basement. And I mean, that's just, I got to tell you, dude, this is, I'll explain what happens, but I got to tell you, this first 15 minutes of this movie, 20 minutes, is really, really like disturbing. It really emotionally attacks you. It's like, man, it's so like I mean, okay, I'll tell it what happens. So she goes down to the basement, and she's scared, and she's crying, and who the fuck wouldn't be? I mean, I'm 37 years old, and I'm a guy, and I'd be crying if you locked me in a fucking garage. I mean, so
I know we know what to do on Halloween to Chris.
Yeah, there you go. But she's down there, and she gets lured in by this pleasant sounding voice, and sometimes that which is evil sounds the most pleasant in the world, right?
Yeah.
So excuse me, she's going to this door, and she hears this voice, and she's told all she got to do is unlock the door, and she grabs a key and unlocks this fucking door, and what do you know who won the pony?
I was laughing because it's so. I think this movie has like a lot of bad lines to me. That's one of the things I did notice. Like, it's poorly written. Like like James Whannell. It's like he finally ran out of ideas. They kind of went generic, like with the whole film. But I mean, this one part, like I was laughing. It's all like, I want you at that. It was like you said, like a friendly voice, like, I want you to helping us open open the door. I want to help you. I want you to help us open all the doors. And I'm like, what? Open all the doors. And like they don't really open up like much. Like, it would have been cool if like the demon helped. Like this whole movie, if like the demon would have somehow, we would have had more demons in this film or more bullshit, like kind of like Scooby-Doo and the 13 Ghosts when they let out all these different ghosts. Like, it would have been cool if like, at least let out, like as a kid, let out all these different demons, behind these doors, and like maybe we saw those different demons in other films. I know like there's that the red face demon does escape on here, but it's by accident. But it would have been cool if she would have like done something more about opening doors rather than she opens one door and she gets the chair shot.
It would have been that. I exactly, 100% agree with you. And that's the thing of this movie is they have a little bit of imagery and one incident, and that merits the movie being called The Last Key. Something like that. It's like, okay, so like here's a very, very simple example and a childish example, and you're gonna laugh. But when I think of like a key as a main object or a significant object in a movie, in a TV show, whatever, I'm thinking to myself, everyone is vying for possession of this key, and the reason is because fill in the blank. It allows you to do this. It allows you to enter here.
Yeah.
It allows you to turn this thing on. Whatever. Like, for example, best example I can give is G1 Transformers, and I know you didn't really grow up watching that because it was after your time, but
before my time.
Before your time, yeah. It was very much in me and my older brother's times. We watched that shit every day, and then we rented the tapes even in our older years. But there's an episode where they create the Decepticons that were cars, and then they made the aerial bots that were Autobot jets.
Yeah.
And what they had to do in both cases, what they had to do to create both was they had to have this key to a computer called Vector Sigma, which was the computer that created all Transformers. So if you had if you have this key to Vector Sigma, you can create more Transformers because now they're going to have this spiritual artificial intelligence, even though they're robots. So that's the significance there. What is the significance of having any kind of key? First of all, there's no one key. That's number one. Secondly, it's like, even if you have the key, okay, you walk through this door and then what?
Your heart's beating faster, your blood runs cold, you're haunted by visions of the stories they told. There's a master assailant, and he's out for you. When you hear him coming, what you gonna do?
Lets out the key-face demon that they named, and that's when the mom comes down, like she's kind of like gets fed up with her screaming like "mommy" or whatever the fuck, and then but Elise is kind of like held up or some bullshit when she opens the door, and then her mom ends up dying. She gets like hung by a cord or something that.
It took seeing this 2 times to make the connection. I was like, okay, so she opens the door, and then out of nowhere, something comes down from the ceiling and hangs her mom. Like, okay, so are we going to get explanation on that why? So the first time you watch this movie, it's not going to hit you, it's not going to connect, and you'll be so lost in trying to unfold the mystery that you won't make the connection then either. So the second time I saw this is when I made the connection, like, oh, okay, she opened the door, the demon grabbed the key, and now it really becomes the key demon, and now it's hanging the fucking mom.
Yeah, exactly. And I almost forgot to mention it before, but you touched on it that the mom gave the little boy, her little brother, like a little whistle to call whenever like he's afraid or some shit like that.
Right.
Yeah, and what was the little brother's name? I'm trying to Christian.
Christian.
Yeah, so his name was Christian. I think that's another kind of like a biblical reference, dude, or kind of a because his name's Christian. And,
well, he has a fake brother named Edge, and they both reek of Austin.
Yeah, but the mom goes down there, her eyes get all lit up, and yeah, she ends up dying, and that's the dad's, of course. This one thing I like about this film is that like we're supposed to, because of course, I mean I'm jumping ahead, but like the dad, ends up getting worse and worse. Because the demons release, but I'm here like, well, he was a fucking, we only, the first 15 minutes, the dad's an asshole, and then she has like another kind of like seeing him, locking up chicks, spoiler alert, kind of early, but like, locking up little, girls or whatever, but I'm like, well, and then we see him towards the very end, like trying to like, save Elise, but I'm like, well, the guy's always been an asshole. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's the thing. I know what you're saying, but so yeah, I think it's where the way you can reconcile that in your head is, okay, so he's already fucked up because he's like just a raging alcoholic, and then he works in a prison, and I mean, working in a prison is gonna fuck with you because like you're in this environment where you've got a lot of scumbags, not all of them, but a lot of them. And then they're in this confined environment, and you're having to deal with that, and that will fuck with you too. Then he's an alcoholic, so then when the demon effect of him locking up women, all that's doing is taking his fucked up personality to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems like he's already like the worst of the worst kind of person, damn near. And then we see him just become way worse, but he's already like a horrible person. So I just like, well, I don't like this backstory I think you should have just left the father out of it, because like to have the whole story go in this circle, it's like, what? Well, I mean, I don't really care that the dad's making a redemption or whatever towards the end. It's like maybe I like that the mom does or whatever, but it kind of seems like whatever. But anyway, so Elise was having basically a nightmare, and that's the reason why she we were seeing it, and then we're fast forward to the present day. Specs and Tucker are living with her now, and I have to say, dude, Specs and Tucker were great in the first film. They were okay in the second. I liked them in the third, but this film, they are absolutely horrible, dude. I can't like. They are supposed to be cheesy. I get that, and I like that. But here it's like, or even cringeworthy. Here it's like it's cringeworthy, but it's like overdone. I don't like anything about them really in this film. It kind of just seems like like bad, like they're not bad actors, but bad writing. I guess again too. It's just like don't like anything they did.
I agree. It's bad direction. I think you can be cheesy funny a little bit, but I think they just overdid it here. So like cheesy funny where I thought it was okay was like when they go to Ted Garza's door and he's like, she's psychic and we're psychics. Okay, that's kind of dumb funny. Okay,
I like that. I did like that exactly.
Yeah, it's like you can laugh at that maybe twice.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Okay, all
it
right.
It gets funnier like when they keep doing it. You know what I mean? When they keep doing it to people, like then it gets like funny, like because at first you're like what, and then they keep doing it to other people, and they're just like, just stop already,
Yeah, and then so you can laugh at that 2 or 3 times. Okay, all right, but then too, the other one I liked was what's his face, Specs, when he's talking to Ted Garza, and he says to him, "Yeah, we got a new ride outside. It's the Winnebagost." and then everyone's all awkward. He's all, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna go outside to it right now."
Yeah, I always laugh too because like Elise, like I forgot we were talking about. I don't know if I don't know. I have to kind of remember what it was. But you know how you have? Oh, it's like Rocky. It's like every Rocky film. How like every film or every fight Rocky's gonna have. He's like, I can't fight. There's a reason why Rocky can't fight. Like I just want a movie where Rocky's like, someone challenged me, I'm gonna fight them. That's it. Even when he wanted to start boxing or whatever, I was just thinking about local stuff. He fights Mason the Lion Dixon, and he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know about getting mangled and embarrassed. The same thing with like Elise, like it seems like most of the time, like she doesn't want to help anybody. You know what I mean? It's like this one, like she's like, no, I can't go. I can't go anymore. It's like, can we just have a film where this chick likes to do what she's doing? It's like not deathly afraid of like going in. Like I mean I kind of understand like how it would be a scary thing, but like I guess it would be a better way for her to word it that like, I'm sorry, I can't help you, like right away. You know what I mean? But it's like every single time it's like, I can't do it. My eye, and all that. Like this, it's the same kind of gimmick. And I'm like, come on, at least just be like, well, tell me about it. And then like she, after the fact, say like, well, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't think I can do that. Something like that, but not right away. Like I just don't like that we get the same bullshit. Like in part 3, it was the same thing when the little girl went up to her door and was trying to help her in the beginning of the film, and she's just like, I'm sorry, I don't do that anymore. And it's like, well, when do you do it? You know what I mean? Like fucking A, you know what I mean? Can we just cut the bullshit out? But
it's like, did something happen after the late 80s where she finally in the early 90s decided she wasn't going to do it anymore, but like her name's still, I mean, what the fuck? Like, because in 86, when she goes over to Josh Lambert's house, or fine ass MILF's house,
she's all laughing. Yeah, fine ass MILF's house. Yeah, she's just like laughing about it and everything. But yeah, she gets the call from Ted Garza that he's having shit going on, and she's giving him the sad story. Specs, and she tells Specs and Tucker that they can't go with her and everything like that. And they want to. That's when they show up with that Winnebagost, and they go to Ted Garza. And he's like the typical, how Chris says, mojado. He's like,
that dude was like nuts. That dude wasn't even mod. I mean, he spoke perfect English, but that dude was like nuts. Like the way he talked and shit like that. Like
yeah. I started laughing because I was like, man, he looks like every guy that works on houses around here. He's wearing the hat. He's wearing like the construction worker kind of like shirt over the wife beater or t-shirt, and he's drinking a beer. Of course, every guy in this film has to be drinking a beer. Because he's a wife beater and shit, so he has to be drinking. Like, why don't we change it up and have him like smoke a crack pipe or something? You know what I mean? Like, just mix it up, dude. But yeah, he's over there. Like, did you like know what he was complaining about? Because I know he had Bibles. I mean, of course it's paranormal or demon or whatever, but he had like the crosses everywhere. he had Bibles everywhere. I don't know, was he hearing noises or like he was hearing voices, or did you catch any of that? Because all I know.
I mean, I felt, to me, like all I interpreted when they get to his house, when he starts talking about it, I'm just interpreting that and I'm thinking it's run-of-the-mill Insidious. Okay, he's seeing spirits walking around the house at night and that type of shit, or hearing voices or whatever. Like, I'm only thinking that because you don't get a super clear picture, just from what he describes as like what's going on, and he's way too intense, way too dramatic. Versus like when he first talks to him, he's all cool, oh hey, how you doing, But then they get in the house and he starts going to his description. All of a sudden he's like this possessed psychotic. It's like, what the fuck? So yeah, I didn't really get a super clear picture of what exactly was going on with him from that. I would say, as far as the Bibles go, I mean, that's about run of the mill. I mean, he's a Hispanic male, he's, in a not liberal state, and he's going to have Bibles, especially when you're going through something like that. Yeah. It's what you'd expect. But what I kind of took note of, and leave it only to me to think about stuff like this, Elise, the actress Lin Shaye, is Jewish in real life. And she gets handed a Bible, and then of course she throws it right on the bunk bed, and then fucking her brother in this movie's name is Christian. She's Jewish, and she has a brother named Christian in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're there, and they start doing their investigation. I think she finds the brother's whistle that got lost, right?
Under the bed, in the metal railings.
Yeah. So she's able to find it. She's doing like her little investigation. And she sees like a ghost, like I think Specs and Tucker can see it too, or something, because I remember them saying like there's someone in front of you or whatever, and then like she shows up behind Elise, and Elise like connects the dots or whatever, because again she starts telling a story, has a flashback of her, like you said, when she was an adolescent, like 16 or something, and she sees like a ghost, but they're so used to her seeing ghosts that they think it's a ghost, but it's actually like a real girl that the father had locked up, and she had escaped. She looks like she hadn't showered in about 12 weeks, and that's when she finally decides to leave the house.
Stop, Elise! Stop it, Elise! You're making it up.
Yeah, I was like.
And the movie throws you for a loop on that too, because the dad goes in the laundry room, and when the dad goes in the laundry room, you're mostly seeing it from his perspective, and it looks briefly left and right, and it doesn't show her, so it makes you think that it was in fact a spirit, and now no one else is seeing it.
Yeah, so it kind of like, it's just so much shit going on. Like, oh well, this is because of that. Like they're like, I don't like the fact that they explain everything like that. It kind of like ruins, like I said, like I talked about the first film, how it was better than the second, just because we didn't know who the bride was. It was just some scary ass entity, and then they give like all this background, which was still interesting, but it took away from the first film, and it kind of took away from the demon, or like what I thought was a demon, altogether at first. But anyway, so the next day they go out to eat at a diner, and it's like, damn, Elise has got that great luck, man, because not only did the guy call her to a house that she used to live at, like she shows up at the exact time where her brother's daughters are eating at that diner, dude.
I know, I can't wait till I do an Uber ride tomorrow and I pick someone up at the house that we lived in until I was 4.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck, kind of like the whole movie's like just too much coincidences. Like, I don't mind one coincidence, but the whole movie, like, it's just like, okay, all right. So y'all just ran into her, and like she starts talking, and she's kind of being a weirdo. And Specs and Tucker are doing that kind of like, we're hitting on, like, obviously the girls are in their 20s, but like they're supposed to be, I don't think they're supposed to be like that age, because they're still living with their dad. But that doesn't make sense either, because their dad's like 70 years old and shit, Well,
then again, we got a guy who's 80 years old who claims to be the grandson of President Zachary Tyler. So I mean, anything can happen this day and age. But fuck, man, like, yeah, I see him. Yeah, if okay, let me put it this way: if Elise was 7 in 53, that means she was born in 46, and if he's 2 years younger, so he was born in 48. So if this movie comes out, yeah, you're dead on. 70 is how old he would be, but he's got 20-something daughters, so he got busy when he was 50.
Boy, they look like they're 20, but I don't think like they should. Like, I'm sure in the story they weren't written as 20-year-olds. The same way, like Rod Lane in part 1 of Nightmare on Elm Street was written as a 17-year-old, but he's like 26 and shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the same kind of way. But anyway, so she meets them. The brothers playing the hard to get routine. He's all mad about whatever the fuck. You used to always scare me and terrify me. I don't think anybody, if they haven't seen their sibling in like fucking damn near 50 years or so, like they would start throwing a fit, like, oh, how you been? Like, it's just like, all right, so we're having, discourse just for the sake of having it. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree with you, because like I could see if it's the thing where she ran away from home at 16, and now he has to live with their father for another 4 years, and then get out of the house, whatever the fuck. And I could see, like, if it was 20 years and not talking, I could see that. But, like, once you're both, like, 70 years old, like, most people by then would have let it go.
Yeah, it just seemed like, well, let's just have them argue and whatever. What's it called? So the brother goes back, Christian goes back to the house with the daughters, I think to find the whistle or some shit, and then one of the girls ends up getting her voice box turned off.
It's triple I, Friday night. The sound of chains, the gleam of the blade. Run for your life. It's triple I, time to die. He's in your mind, he's creeping up behind. There's nowhere to hide on a Friday night.
They go back into the house where they used to live in, and did we skip over the part where Ted Garza was locking up people, or that hasn't happened yet, right?
Yeah, well, we actually, let's see here. Yeah, that happens after the diner scene, and yeah, they find out that he's locking up a woman because they go downstairs, and she hears that's where, because they lost it. She found the whistle and then gets lost again. Well, then she hears it again through that same fucking basement door she went to when she was a kid. It's like, whistle once for yes, whistle twice for no. It reminded me of that, knock 3 times on the ceiling if you want my love.
Yeah.
Twice on the pipe. Yeah, it reminded me of that song. So, okay, that's
So
why I'm a. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what happens is, like, after they talk, that's when she goes back to Ted's house, and he finds out that, like, because I guess she senses, like, the girl that he locked up. He's like, you weren't supposed to find her, you were supposed to stop the voices. And I'm like, what's the point of all this shit?
Yeah.
I'm like my God, so it just seemed kind of like very awkward. And like you had mentioned it earlier, it's like, like a horror movie, like I like to get scared, like to whatever, but this movie kind of like is like a downer. Like there's like nothing like, oh, that was good and scary. It kind of just makes you feel like, well, I kind of feel like shit now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to see this guy. I don't want to go see a horror movie about what, ghost and shit, and then it's like, oh, it's like the twist is that there are really girls there, but like we don't even care about these girls other than, yeah, that's fucked up what's happening, But like,
Yeah.
it's not enough to like make me really like, I don't know. It's just hard to explain.
Oh, it's too much of a curveball. It's too much of a swerve. Like, you're watching an Insidious movie thinking you're gonna encounter spiritual shit, and in fact you're not. You're experiencing real girls who you might initially think are spirits, and they're real girls getting fucked with by these crazy homeowners. And then you encounter this one goblin fucking demon thing that it doesn't make sense of why like keys are involved and all this shit.
Yeah, and like you said, they go back, skipping all that. Ted Garza gets shot. Specs does his things to help out it's just whatever. Like, I hated the line. Like, I was talking about the lines in the film. Like, one of the lines I do remember where she's like, sometimes the scariest demons are the ones that are alive, or some bullshit. And I'm like, no. I was like, that you're ruining Insidious for me. Like, I know there's bad evil people, but I mean, like, Ted Garza is not the red-faced demon. I'm sorry, Ted Garza isn't the bride lady. But yeah, Amy goes down to like the cellar for whatever reason. They all split up, and or she goes there by herself, whatever the case is. And I liked one little scene is like she's walking down like a corridor by herself, and like she, like, of course, like the way in true Insidious fashion, like we see the perspective of like the person walking, and then we see where we can actually see the demon, and they can, like, they see that key face demon like behind like a part of the room or the basement that she can't see. But yeah, he crawls up to her and turns off her voice box, which was kind of like okay. And the other sister, what the fuck's her name?
So there's Amy and there's Imogen. Imogen is the one who still stays good, but Amy gets fucked up.
Yeah.
She gets like fucked in the fucking throat with that key finger or whatever, and then they have to rush her over to the fucking hospital. But Imogen eventually is going to get hypnotized so she can enter the further with Elise.
Yeah, that's right. Because Elise goes in there and then she gets fucked over. She finds like a suitcase in like a tunnel or some bullshit, and like the demon comes out of there. It just kind of like, I'm just like whatever. But yeah, the whole ending is basically like part one almost, where they have to go ahead and send someone back to go save the other people. And exactly like you said, Imogen goes in there and we see Elise. And I didn't like seeing Elise with like a collar gimmick, like she's into some SNL shit or whatever.
Yeah.
On her, I was just like, I don't want to see 70-year-old fucking Lin Shaye with like a fucking choker. And
okay,
then,
dude, I didn't even like it at the beginning of the movie when they show her taking off her shirt and they show her in her bra. I didn't even like that.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to see the 7-year-old lady's marks on her back to try and get sympathy. Like, it doesn't make me feel sympathy. It just makes me be like, why are we watching this shit? Like, what the fuck? Like, I want to see somebody's shit get sliced off. I don't want to see it. But yeah, so they're in like the fucking bunker, the fallout shelter basement further, and the red-faced demon comes out with like her nieces like in chains, like dogs or whatever, and he turns into the T-1000 from Terminator 2 and like tries to like stab Elise, and like all of a sudden his arm comes out like I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I don't want to see a demon morphing weapons, you know what I mean? Like, a demon doesn't need all these fucking gimmick weapons, And the dad jumps in front of her, and he tries to help her, and I'm like, it's supposed to make us be like, oh, the dad's, helping. It's like, okay, if he would have helped and would have won, it would have been cool, but it's just like,
right.
He didn't do anything,
Thank you. That's, and see, right there. So, I like, me, and you know how I am. I like the concept of the dad trying to make a face turn, and, now that he's deceased, now that he's in the realm of the dead, he's free from the alcoholism, he's free from working in prison, he's free from being,
free to do what you want to. Sorry, I was thinking about a Striper song, but go ahead.
I love Striper, but, and White Cross, but, and now he's free from all the human limitations and human flaws.
Yeah.
So now he's showing the good that was buried underneath, and he wants to help his daughter, and this is his one last shot to do it, but it's all for nothing. Like, he just gets vaporized.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, it would have been okay, but like he's like I just don't get that part. And one of the nieces blows that whistle, and then the mom finally comes with her over-ass, sexy ass hairdo. That mom's pretty fine, dude. I was like, all right, so how we're doing things thing. And she just like just runs shop on that fucking demon, just like ridiculous, like literally like slaps him with that light gimmick, dude, whatever, a lantern, and like he goes flying like a football field away, dude. I was like, what the fuck? That's all it took, huh? Son of a bitch,
Fucking X-Men could have used her to fight the giant sentinels or something.
Speaking of X-Men, her brother Christian, he plays a guy in the X-Men, like the movies, the recent ones. I think he's like a senator or something like that. Not the most recent ones, but the ones from like early 2000s, I should say. But yeah, I was like, I've seen him somewhere. But yeah, he comes out in that shit, that actor. So at the end, Elise gives him the whistle, and that's when her and Specs and Tucker, they're like, oh, everything's great, and then she has that dream about the fucking she wakes up,
so
she sees the house.
Remember, so she's in the further with all of them, and she's with what do you call it, Amy finds them in the further, as with Imogen and all them, and they're walking through, and like you said, she sees that vision of what's the name, Dalton, in the fucking attic, and I mean, you're like, I understand that they want to link it to that story because it's a prequel to that movie, but it's like that was just kind of like you're in the further, you just defeated the demon that's fucking with your childhood house. You're trying to get here we are trying to get fucking Amy back in her fucking body, and then just randomly you see that vision for no reason. Okay, now Amy gets back into her body. We're all happy. We're doing the Lucky Charms real quick. It's great.
Yeah.
But it's just like. And that's good, and that's fine, and it's a baby face, let the crowd go home happy moment. But why they threw the Dalton thing in there when they're going to reference it at the very end anyway?
Yeah, it just seems like they're trying to squeeze shit in as much, like, how they say, like, with some of those Outlaw Mud shows, they're trying to squeeze, everyone's trying to squeeze shit in there, like, it's the same thing, it's like they're just trying to,
Gotta get my shit in.
Yeah. Like, they try to, like, everything has to be, like, connected somehow, and I hate shit like that, Like, it's fine to have a connection with shit, but, like, not every single damn thing in the film has to have a swerve or a connection or some kind of, like, gimmick. Like, no. The first one was perfect. We don't know what the fuck was going on. It was just a good movie, right? But part 2, it said, oh, you remember that shit from part 1? Well, this is why. And then, like, the same thing with this one. Hey, y'all guys remember part 1? And they do the wink and the nod. And y'all remember Dalton? Does everyone remember? Like, okay, we get it. The first one was the shit. We don't need to reference it every fucking movie, you know what I mean? Like, the best thing that they do is, like, show the red-faced demon every movie. You know? Like, okay, that's it. And they never tell his story, though. You know what I mean? Like, can we get the red-faced demon's fucking origins, But, yeah, she sees the house. She ends up fucking saying that bullshit, like Dalton or whatever. She has her scrapbook, and then she ends up getting a phone call from fine-ass not Lin Shaye, fine-ass Renee's, not Renee, Lorraine. Lorraine's
Barbara.
Barbara Hershey, Lorraine, because Lorraine's from the other one. So, yeah, she's there in her bed, and I like it because we see like the red-faced demon pop out of nowhere and shit. And like these films, like at least to me, I'm like they have some of the best scares towards the end of the film, and it's like, why don't they just have these in the entire, like the way they make the endings of these films, like with all that build up and like, just all that great shit, like why don't they try and make a movie like centered around that? Like they kind of like completely try to think of, okay, what can we do that's a new story, and then somehow they always go back to the shit that works. It's like, why don't y'all just go back to the shit that works and make a story about that? You don't have to like make all these different, like, well, let's think of a new story, but somehow that all connects to the other shit. Like, well, why don't you just make some other shit that, about the old shit? It doesn't have to connect, just tell a story. But it doesn't have to connect, just tell us, okay, the red-faced demon, go. Tell me something about that. It doesn't have to connect to everything that happens in part 1, 2, or 3. But Leigh Whannell, for whatever reason, he loves to connect shit, dude. So that's one of his watch. Insidious 5, you're gonna see like 5 connections. I'm calling it right now, and then I slap my hand on the table. Yeah, exactly, dude. So,
well, it's a basic formula, and it's a truism of any kind of good movie, and it's a truism of professional wrestling. Since we're wrestling fans here, okay. How do you make a story work? You introduce a protagonist character that people can connect with. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, enter the heel, and you get heat on your heel, and then you build up your protagonist or any other kind of babyface off the heat of the heel, and you build them up, and you watch the progression of the struggle against the heel and any other and there can be other moving parts. But first, you have to set up a simple dynamic that people can follow, and then if there's going to be other moving parts, you introduce those only after you have established the simplicity of the dynamic.
Yeah, you got to have the basic. You don't just start building the fucking like water heater and the AC unit on a house you're building if you don't even have like a foundation or like the outside of the, like you have to build it in parts, and you have to, build it in sections that are going to make everything stronger together. You just don't go, let me go start building in the attic. It's like, what the fuck is all that about? But with this film, I have like mixed emotions. Like it's not as bad as I was saying it was, but it's not a film that like I ever like care to go back to. Like Insidious 1, yeah, I'll go back to it regularly. It's a good film. Part 2, maybe a little bit more. Part 3, once in a great while. Great while. That's something I'll go back to, like, maybe once every few years, Yeah. But this one, it's like I have no urge. There's nothing in the film. Like, when you see, like, let's just say, like, a good comic movie, right? And, like, there was this scene that really got you going, or the cool story, like, I got to go back to it every once in a while. This film doesn't do that for me to where it excites me. There was nothing in the film that even stands out. Like, even like when people watch a movie, they usually will say, "Hey, do you like that part?" I remember that was like a thing growing up when you're kids, right? You talk about a movie, "Oh, I like this part." For me, there was like absolutely nothing in this film that made me say, "Oh, I really like that part." It was more of me like saying like I didn't like this and I'm not that kind of person that just hates to hate, bro.
You can feel the tension building up inside by the cover of darkness as the campfire dies.
It's very disappointing when I go back to this film because like Insidious, when I saw the first one, it's kind of like a band, right? Like I always talk about the band Firewind, and I'll probably do a podcast about them. Like you got the first album, I thought it was like, wow, this is like one of the best metal albums I've ever heard. Like, God, this band's gonna go places. Like that's the way I felt about the first movie. I'm like, dude, with the movie like this, and then I heard they were making a part 2. I was like, oh hell yeah, now we got ourselves like a franchise in the making.
Yeah.
And part 2, not as good as part 1, but I still enjoyed it. I was still like, happy, enjoying myself. Part 3, it's different than the other ones, and still enjoyed it. And then you had that 4th fucking album, just like Firewind. You had that 4th album, and you're just like, what the? And like, it's still like watchable, but it's not something that I'm like, I'm gonna go jam out to it. That's Firewind Allegiance for y'all wondering. And yeah, this film I see lots of flaws. I hate the way the writing was, like when Elise is there talking to the Specs and Tucker at the table in the beginning of the film. I'm just spitballing here. In the beginning of the film, and like she's giving out dialogue, and it just seems like very generic dialogue. Like it's having to be explained to us, like we don't understand, and it just seems stupid. I hate to use the word stupid to try to explain a film and feeling, but it just feels like, okay, you don't have to explain this to us, like, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't a James Bond film where we need to, like, understand why James is going to another place. Like, this is, like, we see the flashbacks, we don't need to have Elise explain everything to us, but, yeah.
Not out loud. Let it unfold where we can figure it out.
Yeah, and then even if she's going to explain it, it just sounds dumb the way she makes it seem, or the way they gave it to her to, because I know, fucking Lin Shaye's a badass actress and shit like that, so I know it's not her fault. It's just shitty movie. I have to give it like a 4 out of 10. Not like a bad, extremely bad movie, but it's just like, this is Insidious, dude. This isn't like some kind of dad beating, drinking bullshit. It's supposed to have demons, but we hardly have any demons. And in the trailer, by the way, they had like a lot more demons in the cellar than there were in this film, so they cut out a lot of bullshit. But anyway, tell me how you feel, Christopher J.
I mean, I probably would go with a 5, maybe a 5.5 on this thing. I mean, it's not, it's enjoyable enough because there's so many. If you've seen the first 3, you know who's who and you know what's going on. But it's a letdown in a lot of ways because it's an Insidious movie, but there's no paranormal. Like they trick you into thinking there is up front, and then it unfolds and you find out that it isn't. It's this fucking key demon and these fucking real chicks who are being imprisoned by owners who have gone crazy because of the key demon, I guess. I mean, it's just like like you said, it's a lot of telling, not showing. And I mean, the best movies are the ones that you figure it out by the way events unfold, as opposed to them outright telling you. Like I think just Back to the Future is fantastic about that. That is a model movie for that. And I mean, yeah, like I said, it's not bad. I've seen much worse movies than this, but it didn't. I would agree. It's a movie that they made it just to make it because the other three were hot, and I just feel like it wasn't done with care.
Yeah, and it's way too damn long too. I think it's like almost 2 hours. Almost like an hour and 40 minutes probably, or maybe even something like that, right? But I'm watching it, and I'm like, before like we're like actually getting to anything, I was like, I'm only on. It's been 40 fucking minutes. I still have an hour to go. That's what I'm thinking when I'm watching the film. I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, I mean, Dalton was already in his fucking coma, and all kinds of crazy shit. There was already crazy shit happening before the 20-minute mark, but he's already in his coma. And Renee's getting all this shit happen to her by minute 20. And like over here we're at minute 40, and she's over there, still playing, fucking, butt tag with fucking Ted Garza. And I'm like, wow, what the fuck? It just seemed like there's no one in this film that I liked or cared for. I mean, Specs and Tucker, or at their worst in the franchise. Lin Shaye is still great, like she had shitty lines, but she's still great. Specs and Tucker, very cheesy, generic. The girls, the nieces were supposed to like, maybe they could have carried on the franchise because one of them has like the powers that Elise has. We meet them like way later on in the film, and they're kind of like awkward, and you kind of like tend to like one of the sisters more than the other. But and then you go back to, she's not really the one that has the powers. It's the other one.
The other one, yeah.
Yeah, I think it says her name is Melissa. It wasn't Amy, you fucking liar.
Okay, I'm a liar.
Melissa Rainier. But yeah, it was Melissa and Imogen. But we think Melissa's gonna be the main. She's the fucking, what's that motherfucker that got hurt in NWA? Magnum TA.
Magnum TA.
Yeah, she was the Magnum. We were like, Magnum TA, and then they throw fucking, what's that Russian's name in at the last minute, dude?
Nikita.
Nikita, yeah. Like, that's the way it felt. Like, you got one that's all weird, like, which makes sense, but it's like, I mean, how many swerves are you gonna throw at me, bro? It's like, come on now, like. And then the brother, like, he's just thrown in there because they have to tell the story of Elise. We don't like him. It's just like, whatever.
But then he baby faces himself much later on in the movie.
Yeah, but by then we don't care anymore. And then Ted Garza's thrown in. We don't feel sorry for him. He just seems like a scumbag. He's that. It's just like they made a movie for the sake of making a movie. It's like having a dark match. Like, I just throw a match out there for the fans to watch before the real shit. Like, that's what this film felt like. It just felt like, and I said, I love Insidious, and that's why I keep saying that. I love the Insidious franchise, but this film was a complete letdown, and I hope people understand that. Like, I'm just not like, Joe's just hating the hate, bro. You just don't know.
You're not hating the hate. It's a poorly constructed story. And like I said, there's too many moving parts too early, and it's just like you don't establish a simple premise that people can follow and connect with, and then you introduce these other moving parts. It's like they didn't do that. No.
Yeah, you had said there's a lot going on, and I was like, I like as dumb as that sounds. There's a lot going on. It's like, yeah, it's true. There's a lot going on. Like, we're here, then we're there, then this is happening, then she's doing this, and then we meet these people. It's like, what the fuck? Like, and it's like nothing. And like, even if you're gonna do that, you have people that are memorable or you like something like that, right? Like, you remember Hangover, like. As soon as you see it, you're like, oh yeah, they're doing this, that, or whatever. But they're all memorable people, funny parts. There's nothing memorable. I don't like anybody. It's just whatever the fuck they can think of to continue the story. But we don't even give a fuck about the story. Because what's the story? That Ted Garza's being haunted, but we know it's the key-faced demon, but now it's like he's controlling this guy, but really don't give a fuck about this guy because if he's already damned, that he's damned. And she knew what was going on before this even happened because her dad had to say, like, what's the point of this fucking story?
But if they don't, and that's the thing, you don't care because, for one thing, they don't effectively get heat on the heel. Who's supposed to be the main heel in this
He's
movie?
hardly even in the film, isn't he?
Yeah, it's supposed to, the fucking key demon is hardly there. You just see a couple, but it's like, the thing is, like, take a simple example. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 and Part 2, or even Part 3. What's happening? It's a group of teenagers who are connected for either their friends in high school or they're in that psych ward. Okay, and what's happening? They all, maybe at first they don't know who or what Freddy is, but they know some kind of guy is coming after them. And one by one they get picked off until one of them finally somehow wards him off for a time.
Yeah.
That's a simple premise to follow, and if you watch the movie, you know, yeah, I mean, you just watch it and it makes sense, and you get behind the baby face, and you're angry at the heel, or you're afraid of the heel, or whatever. And they didn't do that in this movie, and I'm not going to do the Jim Cornette voice. But the thing is, what they're supposed to do is like, okay, if the key demon is the heel, and he's the villain causing this alcoholic man to imprison women, or this, you know, day laborer to imprison women, whatever. Well then, we hardly fucking see this key demon. You're not seeing systematically throughout the movie kill against innocent, lovable people. No, it's just they're telling you how bad the dad was. They're showing you how bad Ted Garza is. You see the key demon like twice, and then it's like you don't even know why it's the key demon or why it has to use keys to do anything. If it's a fucking demon, what does it need a key for?
So you're gonna give it a 5.5 out of 5, huh?
At a 5. I'm not fucking Meltzer here, man. Not on this one.
If we were in Japan.
You can take it right to the middle of the Tokyo Dome. I don't give a damn.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you watched it a few. I know it took us a while just because I was watching it in pieces, and I was just like, man. And then it wasn't till towards like the middle. I was like, okay, now I'm interested, and I watched the like middle part towards the end, and I was like, well, it's pretty okay, not very like as bad as I thought it was, but it just felt like you were waiting for something extra or more towards the end. It just felt like flat, and no wonder we haven't heard too much about the sequels, because they were kind of coming out at hotcakes for a little bit. Now it's kind of like, oh. After that stinker, and it still made a shit ton of money, dude. It was made on a budget of $10 million, and it made $167.9 million according to Wikipedia, dude. That's fucking ridiculous, dude.
1,600% return on a movie that's poorly constructed, but it's living. It did so off the reputation of the priors.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the Insidious franchise. So this is it for now. But if we get a sequel, it'll be within the next year or two, because they came out in 2010, they came out in 2013, 2015, and 18. So now it's 2020. I haven't heard any news about about Insidious 5, but I wouldn't think it would come out any later than 2021, 2022. But after this stinker, it's probably over.
But let me ask you this: if we get a sequel, I don't mean to prolong this, but
no, you're great. You're great.
Cool. Good for me. Now, if we get a sequel, what's going to be the story? Because think about it. We've already had 2 prequels to the Lambert saga. Elise is dead, so it's like, in part 2 she's already dead, and in the further, so it's like, what story are you going to tell?
Man, motherfucker, Elise is dead. I'm motherfucker. Well, you gotta do 2. They tried to do it in this film, but they did it very poorly. They try to have someone that's related to Elise continue that same power that knows Specs and Tucker, but they did it so bad that they probably couldn't do it. I mean, like, we have no like this. Think about it this way: we met Elise like about almost like a 45 minutes to an hour or whatever it was into the film of the first film, right? And she was the star of the film, Yeah. That's crazy, right? So that tells you that if you're great and you're good, it doesn't matter if you show up 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in, 40. As long as you got a good 20 minutes period, if you're gonna get over, you're gonna get over. You know what I mean? Like, of course, if you have 5 minutes, then it's kind of tough. But she came in towards the very end, and she got her ass over. Part 2, they didn't really have her in the film too much. They had people, different actresses portraying her, so you can't really say. But part 3, again, she got herself over, and she was in the film quite a bit. in part 4, she's the star of the film, and we got probably the worst film. So to say what the story is, it's like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
don't have Leigh Whannell write this one. That's the best advice. I know he had written the first one, but it was like him just writing a story for the sake of writing a good story, and he did so. But it's like he tries to like connect everything, and it just just make a scary movie. Pretend everything's new. You have the same characters. You're not trying to connect shit. If it was me and I was a director or point, I would say, Leigh, you have this character. Just make it exactly the way you would with like Ghostbusters meets Poltergeist, dude.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to connect to Dalton, or just tell me a story about the red-faced demon. And when I say tell me a story, I don't need to know why he's red or what. Just give me a scary story, dude. And I think that's what they forgot. They're just trying to, like the way like Marvel, like it connects here and it connects there, and Iron Man met Captain America here, so part 4 we're like no. Let's just have a scary fucking movie.
Exactly, and the thing is they're trying to be like Chris Karam. They're trying to be the smartest guy in the room. The problem is that they're trying to be too clever and too smart with their writing, and it's a problem where you just take a step back, take a deep breath, and just remember, all stories that are effective, stories at its core are introduction, conflict, heat on the heel, peak, and resolution, and then downward decline. Now, I popped at the Dalton thing, the Lambert family being brought in at the very, very end of it, but it was just milking it by having them shown again, when they're returning Imogen's body back into her body. Like, again, it's just a simple formula, and he tried too hard to make it too complex. And there's this connection here, and there's this connection here, and this is happening, and this is also happening, and so was an asshole back in the 50s, and blah blah blah. Okay, well, great, but the thing is, like, that's not going to connect with people's core emotions. When you're selling people a movie, or when you're selling people a TV series, or when you're selling people a wrestling show, what is it you have to have? You have to have a relatable protagonist who's basically a good person.
The cover of darkness as the campfire dies. He's moving through the shadows. He can smell your fear. You won't know he's coming till he's there. It's triple night, Friday night. The sound of chains, the gleam of the
You gotta have a relatable protagonist who's basically a good person. You gotta have an antagonist who's basically like you're rooting against them, and they do assholish things that overpower the protagonist that you've gotten behind, that you've emotionally connected with. It builds to a conflict. The babyface, the protagonist, however you want to call it, somehow overcomes it, and then there's a decline after that. Like, you soothe, you relax, everything's okay now, and there's little mini payoffs afterwards, and that's how you get people to just jizz their pants watching a fucking movie or a wrestling show or whatever the fuck. But this is not that. This is just people thinking they're too clever, too intelligent, having too many little mini stories going on at once, and the character, the creature who's supposed to be the villain, gets very little heat. I mean, you hate him when you do see him, but it's not like a systematic, like, long-term thing where they're focusing the heat energy on this creature. I mean, it's just...
Well, it's funny. It's funny that we talked about it. I forgot about it, but I had read something. I forgot where it was from, but originally they didn't even have the key-faced demon in the movie. So I was thinking to myself, what? Like, what was this film about? Because the whole thing is about the keys, and I was like, well, I guess they added a demon to it because there wasn't one in there. I'm like, this is fucking Insidious. This is supposed to be about demons and this and that, like big bads, and like they didn't have him in there. Like, no wonder he's like shoehorned like in the beginning, like, or not even in the beginning, but like in that little middle section where like we actually see him jump out of the suitcase and then him grab Imogen, or not Imogen, the other one, Melissa, to take her voice, and at the very end, it's just like, I mean, you don't have to see him the entire time, but at least kind of like explain what's going on because of him. And it just like, okay, we're supposed to hate the dad and Ted Garza the most. I'm like, it just seemed like,
Yeah.
what
They
were
get more organic heat. I just don't catch up, but they
they
get
organic
more,
heat, organic
Yeah.
heat, yeah.
Yeah, then or get more heat organically than does this key, because the key demon's there and it's a malicious entity and stuff. And we're gonna much later, if you watch it twice, you'll eventually figure out that the key demon was causing them to be assholes and in prison. Oh, okay,
But we don't care by then.
yeah, it's like you've already spent emotional energy hating Ted Garza and hating her dad even more, and it's just like you fuck. I mean, it's like they don't. There has to be a laser focused angry energy at a heel.
Yeah, and by then we didn't care anymore, and like, it's just a man, and we don't spend enough time with these men anyway to really hate them anyway. It's just like, okay, they're scumbags. What else is new? Like, you can go to any bar and see the same guys there.
Especially on Bandown. But just the thing is, like, if this key demon wasn't in this movie to begin with, well, what the fuck? I mean, it was already shitty to begin with. I mean, as far as the heel heat, and now. Then what is she fighting? If she goes back to this house and there's no key demon,
what's
evil
there?
is she fighting? Yeah,
Exactly. It's like, what is the point of this film? And that's what I said back then. That's what I stick to now. And we're beating the shit out of this dead horse.
I mean, you can say that there was some resolution, like in the fact that, okay, the key demon gets defeated. Okay, her dad kind of redeems himself. Ted Garza's dead. There's going to be no more imprisoned girls in this fucking fucked up house. Oh, okay, fine. But you did it in such a way that no one, like you said, nobody gave a damn by the time it happened.
It's too late. It's way too late after that, dude. It was just like, okay. And the fact that they had to shoehorn him in after the fact was like, man, how bad was it originally for them to say, hey, you need to add somebody in there to get over it? Because we had the bride in black or whatever, and then we had the man who can't breathe, and now we don't got anything. So anyway, Insidious 4, folks, I wouldn't recommend you watching it. Definitely watch the first 3, enjoy yourself. After this, you should be watching Freddy versus Jason. Woohoo! And then after Freddy vs. Jason, if you made it this far, you will be watching the Freddy or A Nightmare on Elm Street 2009 or 2010, whatever, I think 2010 remake. So after that, who knows? I think we might get into the Friday the 13th. Who knows, guys? But that's what's set up so far. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you all on the next one.
Peace.